They say a father's love is the purest, most unshakable thing in the world. A father works his hands to the bone, sacrifices sleep, health, even his own dreams, just to see his children smile. And for years, I believed that sacrifice meant something. I believed that no matter how far apart we drifted, no matter how difficult life became, my daughter would always know that her father loved her beyond measure. But I was wrong. The cruelest wounds are not those inflicted by strangers, but by the ones you raised, the ones you fed, the ones you carried on your shoulders when they were too small to walk. And my wound came not with a knife, but with a camera flash on my daughter's wedding day. I'll never forget it. The sound of laughter around me, the shuffle of dresses, the clicking of heels across the polished church floor. Everyone was rushing, preparing, glowing with joy. And there I stood, awkwardly tugging at my tie, waiting for the moment I thought would be one of the proudest of my life. My only daughter, my sweet little girl, was getting married. But that day, instead of standing beside her, instead of holding her close for photographs that would live for generations, she looked me dead in the eye and said words that shattered me. "Dad, please don't stand next to me for the photos. You'll ruin the moment." Those words burned into me like acid on the skin. They seared straight through my heart. But before we reach that moment, let me take you back. Because this story is not just about a single insult. It is about years of sacrifice, love, misunderstanding, and finally, revenge. I wasn't born into wealth. My own father worked at a steel mill, my mother cleaned houses, and from a young age, I knew that survival required hard work. When I became a father myself, I promised I'd give my daughter the life I never had. Her name was Emily. She came into this world on a snowy night, screaming and red-faced, while I stood outside the hospital room praying that both she and my wife would be okay. When the nurse finally placed her in my arms, I cried. Real tears, because I knew, in that instant, my life was no longer my own. Every breath, every dollar earned, every ounce of energy from that day forward belonged to her. I worked 2 jobs for years. By day, I was a mechanic at a local garage. By night, I stocked shelves at the grocery store. I came home smelling of oil and sweat, my hands cracked from the cold winters. Sometimes, I barely saw Emily awake. But when I did, when she waddled into my arms with her little pigtails bouncing, calling me daddy, with that pure smile, everything felt worth it. I miss birthdays sometimes. I miss school plays. I miss family dinners. And yes, Emily noticed. She used to sit at the table, tapping her little fork against the plate, asking my wife, "Where's Daddy? Why isn't he here?" My wife would answer softly, "He's working, honey, for us." But as the years passed, that answer began to sour. Emily started to see me less as a hero and more as an absence, the father who wasn't there for her. And maybe that was my fault. One memory haunts me. Emily was in middle school. She had a recital, her first piano performance. I had promised her I'd be there. I circled the date on the calendar, even left a note in my toolbox at work. But that night, a customer's car broke down, and my boss threatened to fire me if I didn't stay. I thought, if I lose this job, how will I pay for her lessons at all? So I stayed. I worked. I fixed that car. And I missed the recital. When I came home, Emily was sitting on the couch, her dress still on, makeup smeared from crying. She didn't even look at me, just whispered, "You promised, Dad." And in that moment, I felt like the worst father alive. From that day on, I noticed a wall forming. Slowly, brick by brick, year by year. She grew closer to her mother's side of the family, her uncles, her cousins, people who always seemed to have the time I didn't. Still, I kept working. I thought money, stability, and a good future would make her proud. I was wrong. Fast forward to the wedding preparations. By then, Emily was a grown woman, smart, beautiful, independent. I should have felt proud, and in many ways I did. But there was a distance between us, a coldness. Whenever we spoke, it was polite, short, almost like speaking to a stranger. She planned the wedding with her mother. I was invited, of course, but never consulted. The venue, the dress, the music. It was all chosen without me. I told myself, that's okay. Weddings are for mothers and daughters. My role will come when she walks down the aisle on my arm. But even that moment was stripped from me. Her fiancé, Daniel, a decent man though a bit aloof, had suggested that Emily's uncle, her mother's brother, walk her instead. You've always been more like a father to me, she had told him, loud enough that I could hear across the room. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Still, I swallowed the pain. I told myself, it's her day. Don't ruin it. Smile, be supportive. That's what fathers do. So I wore my best suit. I polished my shoes until they shined. I stood ready, waiting for my chance to at least be in the photographs, to stand beside my daughter and prove, if only in a picture, that I mattered. And then she said it. Dad, please don't stand next to me for photos. You'll ruin the moment. Her words were cold, dismissive. She didn't even meet my eyes. Guests stared, awkward, whispering. My hands trembled. My lips parted, but no words came. I wanted to scream. Ruin the moment? I gave you every moment of your life. Every birthday cake, every warm bed, every chance at school. It was all because of me. But I said nothing. I simply stepped aside. And in that silence, something inside me broke. The ceremony itself went by in a blur. I sat in the second row, my hands clenched so tightly the veins of my knuckles looked ready to burst. From where I sat, I could see Emily's smile, radiant, glowing, brighter than I had ever seen it before. She laughed, she cried, she kissed Daniel, and every guest cheered with unshakable joy. But not once did her eyes drift toward me. Not once did she look for me or acknowledge me. It was as though I was invisible. When the vows were exchanged, I felt pride swell inside me despite the pain. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe after the ceremony she would come to me, that she would hug me and whisper, "Thank you, Dad. I know I was hard on you, but thank you." That moment never came. Instead, the reception only poured salt into the wound. The hall was decorated beautifully. White roses on every table. Crystal glasses glimmering under chandeliers. The smell of roasted chicken and buttered rolls filling the air. Laughter echoed all around me. Music from a live band carried across the room. It was supposed to be a celebration. But for me, it felt like exile. Everywhere I turned, I saw family members taking pictures, posing with Emily, hugging her, kissing her cheek. She glowed in every photo. Her uncle, her cousins, even distant relatives I barely recognized were all given front row access to her joy. And me? I sat at the far end of the hall, table 12, practically by the door, as though I were a guest of no importance. My name card looked hastily written, shoved next to strangers I barely knew. The photographer roamed from table to table, capturing smiles and laughter. When he reached my side, Emily's mother leaned in and whispered something to him. He nodded, then turned his camera away. I wasn't just excluded from the wedding photos. I was erased. But the final humiliation came when they announced the father-daughter dance. For months, I had rehearsed in my mind how it would feel to take Emily's hand, to sway under the soft lights while a song carried us back through years of memories. I thought maybe she'd choose something meaningful. A lullaby I used to hum, or a classic love song I'd once played on the radio when driving her to school. Instead, her uncle stepped onto the dance floor. The DJ announced loudly, "And now, for a very special dance, Emily will share this moment with a man who has always been like a father to her. Her uncle, not me. The crowd erupted in applause. My chest hollowed. My hands shook against my lap. I stared as my daughter twirled across the floor, her dress spinning, her laughter ringing out, her arms wrapped around another man's shoulders. And me? I sat there, a ghost at my own daughter's wedding. I could feel eyes on me, pitying glances, awkward whispers. Someone at my table muttered, "Poor guy. Must have done something to deserve that." But what had I done? I had sacrificed everything for her. Every choice I ever made was to give her a better life. And in the end, she looked at me not as a father, not even as a friend, but as a burden. The anger boiled in me. For the first time in my life, love for my daughter tangled with rage. I excused myself quietly, slipping out into the night air. The music dulled behind the doors, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of passing cars. My breath came heavy, clouds of condensation, in the cold night. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I leaned against the wall and whispered to myself, "She doesn't want me in her life? Fine. She'll see what life looks like without me." And in that moment, the seed of revenge took root. Over the weeks that followed, I replayed every insult, every dismissal, every tear I had swallowed silently. And one decision became clear. Emily had made her choice that day, not just to cut me from her photographs, but from her life. So I decided to return the favor. I began the process of rewriting my will. I had accumulated more than Emily ever knew. Years of saving, investments in land, retirement funds, money that could have set her and Daniel up for life, money that could have bought her a house, sent her children to college, ensured she never had to struggle. But as I sat with the lawyer, pen in hand, I made the coldest decision of my life. I removed Emily's name entirely. Every dollar, every property, every account was redirected to charities, to distant cousins who had shown me kindness, even to the son of a neighbor who once helped me mow the lawn when I was sick. Anyone but her. And in the margin of that document, I wrote a note in my own handwriting. To my daughter Emily, "You cut me out of your life's most precious moment, so I cut you out of mine." Now, some people may call this cruel. Some may say a father should forgive, that a father should give unconditionally no matter what. But I ask you, what is the worth of unconditional love when it is spat upon, disrespected, humiliated in public? No, my revenge was not loud. It was not fiery. It was silent, calculated, permanent. Emily wanted a life without her father's presence. Now, she would live a life without her father's legacy. And I, for the first time in years, felt a strange peace. Time as a way of softening anger or hardening it into stone. For me, it hardened. Weeks turned into months after the wedding. Emily and I barely spoke. She sent occasional text, a picture of her and Daniel on vacation, a short Merry Christmas, Dad, or "Hope you're doing well." But they felt hollow, empty gestures. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the pain she caused me that night. I kept waiting for her call to sit down with me and say, "Dad, I messed up. I shouldn't have treated you that way." But silence became her language, and in that silence, my resolve only grew stronger. Then, 1 year later, my health began to falter. The doctor spoke in quiet tones, avoided my eyes as they explained test results. Words like chronic, progression, and limited time were dropped like heavy stones onto the sterile white floor. I listened, nodded, thanked them, but inside I was calm. My life had been long, my story nearly finished, and I had already written its final chapter. I updated the will once more, ensuring every detail was airtight, every asset accounted for, every instruction precise. Emily was still nowhere to be found in those pages. And then I waited. When the end came, it came quietly. I drifted in my sleep one night, the weight of years easing from my chest. I left behind no drama, no confrontation, only documents and letters, sealed and delivered to those who mattered. It wasn't until weeks later, at the reading of the will, that the storm broke. The lawyer's office was crowded. Daniel sat with Emily, her face painted with confidence. Perhaps she believed she would inherit everything. After all, she was the only child, the only rightful heir. I imagined she pictured new houses, bank accounts swelling, financial freedom secured. But as the lawyer read aloud, that confidence began to crack. Her name never came. Instead, it was charities, neighbors, distant cousins, people who had shown me kindness in moments she never noticed. The lawyer listed them one by one, each beneficiary widening Emily's eyes further. Finally, the letter I had left was opened. The lawyer read my words aloud. To my daughter Emily, who excluded me from her wedding photographs in her heart, I have returned the favor. I raised you with everything I had, but in the end, you erased me from your life. This is not punishment. It is consequence. A father's love is strong, but it is not endless. The room fell silent. Emily's hands shook as she grabbed Daniel's arm. Her face reddened, her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but no words came. For the first time, she looked small, fragile. What do you mean, nothing? That's impossible, she shouted. But the lawyer only shook his head, showing her the signed pages, the sealed documents. It was undeniable. She had been erased from my story, just as she had erased me from hers. The weeks that followed were not kind to Emily. Relatives whispered behind her back. Some sympathized with me. Others scolded her for her pride. Friends who had once celebrated her marriage now shook their heads in quiet judgment. She tried to fight it, tried to paint me as a bitter old man. But deep down she knew. She knew what she had done. She knew she had cut me out long before I cut her out. And that knowledge haunted her. One night, Daniel found her sitting at the kitchen table, her wedding album open in front of her. She was crying quietly, tracing her finger over the photos. Photos filled with smiling faces, laughter, family, and not a single trace of me. Her uncle smiled in the pictures. Her mother glowed. Guests cheered. But I was absent, and in that absence, she saw everything. She whispered into the empty kitchen, "I did this. I erased him." Her tears fell onto the glossy pages, smudging the ink, warping the paper. But it was too late. The past could not be rewritten. The photographs were permanent, and so was my revenge. Some say revenge is hollow, that it leaves both sides broken. But in my silence, in my absence, I found something else, not victory, but closure. I had given Emily every chance to choose me. She chose otherwise. And so, I simply let her live with the choice she made. Sometimes, the deepest revenge is not fire or fury, it's absence. The absence of love. The absence of inheritance. The absence of a father who once would have done anything for his daughter. And Emily, for the rest of her life, every time she opened that wedding album, she saw her mistake. Every time she looked at her bank account, at her modest home, at the struggles she faced with Daniel, she remembered what could have been. She remembered the father she erased. And in that way, my presence remained with her forever, not in photos, not in gifts, not in money, but in the silence I left behind. Life is fragile. Relationships are fragile. Looking back, I wonder if things could have been different. Maybe if Emily had paused that night, pulled me into just one photo, or whispered, "Dad, I love you," the story would have taken a different turn. Maybe I would have left her everything. Maybe she wouldn't spend her nights staring at photographs where my face was missing. But life isn't built on maybes. It's built on choices. And Emily made hers. She chose to erase me. And I chose to let that decision echo back to her, louder than any words could. As fathers, as parents, we give and we give. Our time, our money, our hearts. We pour ourselves into our children with the hope that when they grow, they will carry us with them, not cast us aside like old clothes. When that bond is broken, it's not just painful, it's final. That's what my story is about. Not greed, not punishment, but the simple truth that love, once abandoned, doesn't always return. For some listening today, maybe you felt the sting of being forgotten by family. Maybe you've given everything, only to be pushed aside when it mattered most. Or maybe you're on the other side. Maybe you've taken someone for granted. Maybe you've forgotten the father, mother, or grandparent who quietly gave you their all. If so, I hope my story serves as a reminder. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't let photographs become symbols of regret. Don't let silence replace love. Because once the chance is gone, there are no do-overs. And so my revenge is not fire, not anger, not shouting. It was absence. A quiet, haunting absence that followed Emily every time she opened her wedding album. Every time she thought of inheritance. Every time she remembered the father who loved her until she chose to forget him. In the end, that silence spoke louder than any words I could have ever said. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to support the channel. Subscribe for more real-life stories of betrayal, revenge, and family drama that cut deep. And share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been erased by someone you loved? Or did you regret pushing someone away too late? Your story might inspire our next one. This is True Stories, where real lives, real betrayals, and real revenge come to light. Until next time, remember, family is precious. Don't let pride or anger take away the faces that matter most.